Today, we're going to be talking about how we leverage the microbiome, how we make it simple, and how we can leverage some really cutting edge technologies to not only understand the microbiome, but help shape it and improve clinical care. So as Quinn said, I did my PhD in AI over 20 years ago, started my career at Siemens building AI and radiology. Then I was at HeartFlow building AI and cardiology. This was a cardiovascular diagnostic test for coronary disease. We also built this digital twin that allowed you to do virtual stenting. And this was the first FDA-approved digital twin, actually. It was also the first Medicare payment for an AI product in healthcare. And then I was leading Page AI, which was a spin out of Memorial Sloan Kettering, building AI in cancer, detecting cancer in tissue. And we had the first FDA approval for an AI system in pathology, an inventor on over 300 patents. And I know that the holiday season just passed, but I did write 2 books, so keep those in mind for next year. Okay, so why the microbiome? Why do testing? We're going to talk about microbiome science. We're going to talk about how AI can be used to decode the gut microbiome. And then we're going to do some case reviews of how to put this all together. All right, so why the microbiome? What excites me about the gut microbiome is that every aspect of our health has been linked to the gut microbiome at this point. It's metabolic health, fatty liver, obesity, diabetes. Obviously, GI and gastrointestinal disease, cardiovascular disease has been linked with the gut microbiome. Mental health, neurodegenerative disorders have been linked with the gut microbiome. Autoimmune conditions, skin rashes and psoriasis, rosacea, eczema, and even athletic performance, joint pain, fatigue, and endurance. All of this has been linked with the gut microbiome. And we've seen in both the scientific press, in the popular press, this incredible excitement around all these discoveries that really have taken place in the last 10 or 15 years as sequencing has been cheaper and more common and more accessible. When we think about why we do microbiome testing, it really has to do with this concept of root cause medicine. And so many root causes are linked with the gut microbiome. Gut dysbiosis itself is often a root cause, but parasites, mold, mycotoxins, infectious organisms, all of these are also elements of the gut microbiome. Nutrition also plays a big role in shaping the gut microbiome and also in how the gut microbiome is breaking down food and helping you metabolize nutrients. And we also know that the microbiome is strongly linked with inflammation and is tightly plugged into the immune system. And we also know that the general public is paying attention to the gut microbiome and gut health more than ever before. We see evidence of this with mainstream entertainment and social media, things like these Netflix documentaries that keep coming out, with a proliferation of gut health products, and with news articles and really popular press that talks about all of the exciting science and the discoveries that we're finding of how the microbiome, probiotics can really impact and improve your health. In fact, today, 48% of consumers take some sort of probiotic daily or almost daily. Now, because of all of this interest, consumers are buying their own microbiome tests, but they're confused. And even clinicians are not able to keep up with all the latest science. We looked at Reddit and people are just posting all of these gut microbiome tests and they are super confused. They're asking for help. They don't know what any of this means. And they really are interested. They're willing to pay for it, but they're confused. And when we think about who is doing this microbiome testing, who's interested, it's really 3 different groups. There are people who have health issues, people who are looking for root causes, looking for solutions, looking for answers. We have athletes, biohackers, people in the health spa and beauty industry, really people who want to perform better, who want to look better, who want to feel better. And then there's a general wellness and prevention group, which is not necessarily trying to solve any particular problem, but these people are really trying to just do a general checkup and make sure everything's okay. And if it's not, then to take action and get ahead of it. Now let's talk about microbiome science. One of the biggest challenges with the microbiome and microbiome studies is complexity. And not only is the complexity, but the rapid evolution of the microbiome and of the literature. So there's the inherent data complexity of 30 trillion organisms in your gut that can change dynamically over time. There are more than 1,000 times more genes in your gut microbiome than there are in your human cells. We know that disease states are rarely related to a single organism being too high or too low, but oftentimes it's a whole ecosystem shift. It's a complete dysbiotic state that is linked to different diseases or health conditions or symptoms. So it's not just a single organism. And so that makes it very difficult to understand what's going on by looking at someone's gut. And we also know that when we do interventions, whether it's diet or lifestyle or supplements or what, they don't often influence just a single organism to go up or down. Again, it produces some sort of ecosystem shift in the gut microbiome, which is also complex. So in other words, the data is complex, the relationship to disease is complex, and then when you try to make an intervention, those interventions have a complex impact on the gut microbiome. Furthermore, adding to all of this, the literature is exploding. It's challenging to navigate. There's a number of microbiome studies that are published in PubMed every year, and you see it's just growing exponentially. And so today, there are more than 2,000 studies per month, almost 3,000 studies per month now on the microbiome. And that's far more than any one human can read and keep up with. So when we dive deeper into these different elements, for example, just to look at the complexity of how the gut microbiome is related to different diseases, for example, type 2 diabetes, when you compare a diabetic microbiome to a healthy microbiome, you see, again, it's not just a single organism being too high or too low. It's a complete dysbiotic state that is shown to be linked with type 2 diabetes. These organisms are higher in people with type 2 diabetes, and all these organisms are lower in people with type 2 diabetes. It's very difficult for someone to keep this all in their head. We've seen studies like this too, where two different people, the same food, one person will have a glucose spike and the other person will not. And it's very hard to predict who's going to have a glucose spike, who's going to respond to which food in which way. When these researchers did this study, they did genetic tests and they did blood tests, and they really tried to figure out how to predict who is going to respond to which food with a glucose spike. And they found that the number one single greatest predictor of personalized glucose response was your microbiome composition. In other words, your microbiome is really impacting how you digest, how you process, how you metabolize these foods. We also know that the use of antibiotics has really changed our gut microbiome. There are now a lot of studies that have linked the use of repeated antibiotics with obesity. There was this study that was done in Korea, in the Korean population, where they cut up the entire population into 4 groups of people who had never taken antibiotics, people who had taken the most antibiotics, and the 2 groups in between. And what they found is that there was almost a straight line of dependence on obesity between these 4 groups, whether you measured it with BMI or waist criteria. It's not obviously a straitjacket. There are people who have taken a lot of antibiotics that are not obese and vice versa, but there is a very strong correlation here that is hard to ignore and even hard to predict and understand. Now, when we look at trying to intervene in the microbiome with diet, with lifestyle, with supplements, each one of those interventions also has a complex change in your gut. So this is a summary of how certain diets will impact your gut microbiome. So like, for example, going vegan will lower certain organisms, raise other organisms. It's very difficult, again, to keep all of this in your head. And when you think about recommending a ketogenic diet or a low FODMAP diet or a Mediterranean diet for somebody, it's hard to remember exactly what organisms are going to go up, which ones are going to go down, and how that's going to affect overall health. Even worse, we have other elements of the gut microbiome literature which are difficult. We start to see not necessarily contradictions, but complexities here. So for example, many of you have heard of akromansia, and there's been a lot of interest in akromansia recently for good reason, because there are studies that have shown that low levels of akromansia are linked with Crohn's disease and a whole range of other diseases. And so from all of these studies, many people have concluded akromansia is good. Too little of it is linked with Crohn's disease. However, if you keep reading the literature, you'll see studies like this, which find that high levels of akromansia are actually linked with Parkinson's disease. Now, again, we don't know causality in all of these cases, but it's more complex than just saying akromansia is good, akromansia is bad, bifidobacterium is good or bad. Each of these organisms has a certain range, a certain ecosystem that seems to be linked with both disease and with health. Sometimes the same organism and the same disease can even have contradictory results. So for example, B. fragilis has been linked with Crohn's disease when it's too low. At the same time, other studies have found that B. fragilis too high is also linked with Crohn's disease. So how do we navigate this? Is it we need a certain range of B. fragilis? Are these studies just noise? Is it random? Are they contradictory? Are they poorly done? It's very difficult to navigate all of this literature. And this is why we think AI is going to be the key technology that allows us to really understand somebody's gut microbiome, do that linkage with all these different diseases, and help figure out which interventions are going to be most effective for someone. Let's talk about that. When most people are doing microbiome testing today, it's a qPCR panel. So it's a fixed set of organisms. Often it's about 30 different organisms that get looked at, mostly pathogens, some commensals or probiotics. But this is a very narrow scope of analysis. You're missing hundreds of different organisms that live in somebody's gut. You can really think of this as really looking through a keyhole into somebody's microbiome. You only see 20 or 30 different organisms, and you're missing the big picture. Now, these tests also don't have analysis. They don't understand how different dietary or lifestyle interventions are going to affect the microbiome. Requires manual interpretation, multiple hours of training. And there's just a missing link between all of those 2,000 studies published every month and these 30 organisms that get measured in a qPCR panel. Now, you can open the door and look beyond just those 30 organisms with shotgun metagenomic sequencing. But now you have a different problem. Now you're overwhelmed with data. You've got 200 to 500 different species in your gut. There are 11,416 species, which have been observed in the gut and linked to health in one way or another. But any one person's microbiome is only likely to have 200 to 500 different species. So when you do metagenomic sequencing, shotgun sequencing, you see this whole picture, but now you're overwhelmed with data and you don't know what to do with it. So the question that we asked is, how can we help clinicians interpret that list of hundreds of different organisms? Can AI help bridge the gap between all of this incredible, very rich data about a person's health and actually, trying to make analysis and ultimately intervene in an effective way? And the answer is yes. So let's talk about how AI can be used to analyze all of this data, understand somebody's health, and then make effective interventions. So when people think of AI now, as I mentioned, I did my PhD in AI 20 years ago, but in 2025, people think of AI, they think of ChatGPT. And so a lot of people might think, oh, okay, great. I'll just feed all of PubMed into ChatGPT and I'll pass it my microbiome test data, and this will give me all the answers. Unfortunately, that just doesn't work like that. ChatGPT is a language model. It's going to be inconsistent in its answers. As a language model, it doesn't really do data analysis well. It doesn't know the normal ranges of different organisms. It doesn't know how to apply these study results to interpret a microbiome test. It doesn't know how to resolve these contradictions. A ChatGPT is not going to know which information to extract from a study or how to judge a study quality. There's no mechanism to assess the impact of different interventions. And ChatGPT is also known for hallucinating or making things up. So for this reason, a microbiome-specific AI model is really required to systematically read all of those studies and interpret complex medical data. And that's exactly what we built at Jonah. So let me tell you a little bit more about that and show you how it works. Jonah's AI only reads relevant studies, peer-reviewed studies, incredible journals, based on human subjects, studies done from stool samples in vivo using sequencing technology from subjects who are age 5 and older. Every study is given a quality score based on the study size, the cohort, and the journal quality. And the AI resolves study contradictions basically by adding up the evidence weighted by quality on all sides of any question. There's an expert review of each paper read by the Jonah AI before it's applied to interpret a microbiome test. We have a quality management system to really ensure that the AI is extracting this information correctly. Because the AI is also reading the interventional literature on how your microbiome changes with diet, lifestyle, supplements, those interventions can be applied virtually with a digital twin to assess the impact at an ecosystem level of each of those interventions. So to break that down, here's how it works. First of all, the AI is continuously reading the entire medical and scientific literature about the gut microbiome. Then when we do a test for you, and the AI can match your microbiome composition to every study that's ever been published and identify all of the signatures that have been linked to known symptoms, conditions, or diseases. Then the AI also reads the interventional literature on how the gut microbiome can be changed with diet, lifestyle, supplements, and so on. And those changes can be applied digitally. So, you saw before how going vegan will increase certain organisms and decrease other organisms. With Jonah's digital twin, we basically apply that change to your current microbiome and then see how that change is going to affect your health based on all these known studies. And so digitally, we can give you or your client every dietary intervention, every lifestyle intervention, every supplement. And by calculating that change based on the known literature, determine which ones are going to be most effective for reversing the signatures that have been linked with different health conditions. And then all of that analysis gets pulled together into a personalized analysis report and action plan to help that person change their microbiome and ultimately help them achieve their health goals. So now I'm going to go into some case reviews. The first one is a 31-year-old female. Obviously, this is a stock picture. She's overweight. She's having chronic pain, abdominal pain, fatigue. She's having skin rashes and outbreaks. And her mental presentation was that she had suffered mental trauma. She was having post-traumatic stress disorder. She was depressed. She was having brain fog. She felt cognitively impaired. And from a GI standpoint, she was having bloating, constipation, diarrhea. And then let's look at how Jonah analyzed her gut microbiome. So we offer this gut microbiome test. It's a stool sample. You send it off to the lab. We do deep sequencing, identify everything in your gut down to a strain level. And then the AI does all of the analysis, the digital twin, everything that we just talked about. And let me show you what that looks like. So it starts here with an overview of her microbiome. So her diversity is bad, which is not a surprise given everything that we were looking at in the presentation. She had 0 pathogens, which is interesting because all of those PCR tests that we talked about that are really standard in the market would be negative. They'd find nothing because there are no pathogens here. And yet through this AI analysis, we're able to look at how her microbiome is linked to her brain health, to her GI health, to her metabolic health, to her skin health, and to her physical performance. Each one of these sections is color-coded, red, yellow, or green, based on how it looks. So she has a lot of red and yellow, particularly the red in the brain health and the GI health. So when we look at brain health, we see that her microbiome has a strong link with anxiety and depression, as well as post-traumatic stress disorder, which is really remarkable given her clinical history. It has a moderate link with stress, and there's a little bit signature moving in the direction of Parkinson's disease. You can see what was not found in her microbiome, which was attention deficit disorder, ADHD, or migraines. With any of these, you can dive in deeper and really see all of the evidence behind this. So for example, with anxiety, if we click in here, this link with anxiety between her microbiome was based on these 16 studies. These are listed here in order of study quality. So cohort size and quality of the journal. It's all here. These link out to PubMed if you want to go read the source material yourself. These are the 30 organisms that these studies have linked with anxiety when they're too high or too low. And these are all of her levels for these. And these are the specific actions that she could take. These are all primarily dietary actions that would move her microbiome in a way that would reverse this signature of anxiety. And you see up here, it says establish research. And that's because there are a sufficient number of studies of sufficient size and quality to have established this link between her gut microbiome and anxiety. Now, if we go to something like PTSD, we do find this indication of PTSD in her microbiome as well, but this is limited research. It's only these 5 studies, so fewer studies, smaller studies. And again, these all link back out to PubMed. These are the 8 organisms that have been linked with PTSD when they're too high or too low, and all of her levels. And then these are the actions that she could take if she wanted to change these organisms in such a way to reverse that signature. That's for brain health. Now, if we go into GI, we see that her microbiome has a strong link with Crohn's disease, also with abdominal pain and leaky gut. There's a moderate link between her gut microbiome and bloating, as well as non-alcoholic fatty liver, and lower levels of association with acid reflux, diarrhea, celiac, constipation, and colitis. Again, her microbiome, there's no association linked with gas. And with any of these, once again, you can dig in deeper. You can look at Crohn's disease. This one is very well studied. There's 64 different studies that have linked your gut microbiome with Crohn's disease. These are the different organisms. These are the different actions. All of these actions get pulled together into a single composite action plan at the end. We can also tell what nutrients are able to be digested and broken down, metabolized by an individual by looking at the composition of their microbiome as well. And so that information is also here. Now, with metabolic health, her microbiome had a strong link with hypertension, moderate link with hypothyroidism, metabolic syndrome. Sleep apnea has been linked with the gut microbiome, as well as type 2 diabetes and hyperglycemia. None of this is really a big surprise given her weight and her BMI. And then from a skin health standpoint, her microbiome has a strong link with chronic hives, a moderate link with acne and eczema, and a little bit with psoriasis. Now, if you remember, she also reported fatigue, back pain, abdominal pain, and we see a strong link between her microbiome and chronic fatigue syndrome, moderate with back pain, and a little bit with some of these other areas. Then the AI, remember, does this digital twin analysis and virtually gives her every diet and lifestyle and supplement, leveraging the literature to understand how those things are going to change her gut ecosystem, and then pulls all of it together to see how we can try to move her microbiome in a direction away from all these different conditions. And that answer is given here with the action plan. So you see, these are the different actions that she can take. They're listed in order of impact. So the omega-3 fatty acids are going to have the greatest impact for her, and then the galacto-oligosaccharides and so on. It's not all diet. You see some lifestyle changes. And also, many of these could be done in supplement form as well. If you want to dive deeper and understand why omega-3 fatty acids, for example, you can click in here. You can see how omega-3s change your gut microbiome, why that change is important. All of the studies that have shown the ways in which omega-3s have been demonstrated to change your gut microbiome. And then these are just some examples of sources of omega-3s. We're also going to be adding a probiotic list of strains you should be adopting and avoiding or looking for in a probiotic, although we don't sell any supplements or probiotics ourselves. And we're also working on generative AI meal planning too, which will allow you to take all of these recommendations together and thread them into a breakfast, lunch, and dinner for someone. If all you care about is, for example, Crohn's disease, you can click on here. You can see the actions are linked with Crohn's disease, but most people want to see everything all together. If you do want to see any of the organisms, all of the raw data from her microbiome test, it's also available here as well. You can search for any particular organism. So for example, if you wanted to know H. pylori or something like that, you can find it by searching. Any organisms you want, you can search for. All of the pathogens like H. pylori would show up here in this section. So this was case 1. Let's go back and look at case study 2. So case study 2 is a 49-year-old female. She had normal weight. However, she was having chronic pain, abdominal pain, fatigue, and she was also having migraines. From a GI standpoint, she was having diarrhea and heartburn. So let's look at her JONA results. So her diversity was also low. And what we found is that her microbiome has a strong link with depression, anxiety, and stress. Now, despite the fact that she reported GI symptoms, there were no really strong associations between her microbiome and the GI symptoms that she reported. A little bit. She mentioned acid reflux. So there's a moderate signature in her microbiome for acid reflux. However, we do see a strong microbiome link with anxiety and stress, which may be contributing to some of these GI symptoms that she's exhibiting. However, these pain and fatigue she's reporting, we do see signatures for those in her gut microbiome with chronic fatigue syndrome or chronic pain or fatigue, even some small signature for back pain, linking her gut microbiome to these different conditions. And again, all of these, if she or if the practitioner or the clinician wants to see more. You can see which organisms are involved. You can see all of the source evidence and really the level of research that's established that link. Now with her, all of this again gets pulled together into an action plan through this digital twin analysis where many fewer conditions, many fewer issues to address than the first case. And we see some overlap of these different actions and dietary changes, but the order is different. In fact, in our knowledge base, there are over 4,000 different actions, different dietary changes, different lifestyle changes or supplements that have been shown to impact the gut microbiome in a prescribed way. So for her, omega-3 fatty acids also appear, but they're much less important than they were for the first woman. Whereas the galacto-oligosaccharides will have a much stronger impact for her, given the type of dysbiosis she has and the ways in which she wants to try to move her microbiome. And again, one can click in here. You can understand how galacto-oligosaccharides are changing your microbiome and why that change is important, the different studies that have shown how galacto-oligosaccharides are changing your microbiome. And I'll go back and point out that, once again, this individual had 0 pathogens, 0 H. pylori, 0 C. diff, 0 E. coli. So with a lot of these classic PCR tests, they'd just be completely negative. And despite the fact that there are significant links in her microbiome to known diseases and conditions and actions that she could take to change her microbiome in a way that reverse those signatures. The way Jonah works is the clinician makes an account on our provider portal, and you can order kits for the client. You can also order through Emerson if you are using Emerson. We are working with Rupa. That's why we're here, to get on Rupa in the coming months as well. Either the clinician receives kits to their office that they can hand out, or those kits can be sent directly to the clients. The stool sample is sent back to the lab, and there we do this deep shotgun metagenomic analysis, analyzing all the bacteria, the fungus, the viruses, everything in the person's stool sample. And then the AI technology matches those patterns in the test result to every study that's ever been published, establishing those links with these different conditions. And then also that digital twin analysis that allows an assessment of which interventions are going to change the person's microbiome in a way that can reverse some of these dysbiotic states. The clinician receives the client's results in 2 to 3 weeks after the sample is received in the lab. And then the clinician can choose to share the results directly with the client or not. I didn't show it to you, but in addition to that interface, you also get a PDF report, which is a summary of all of it that can be used to put into the EMR or as an artifact to email to somebody or to print out for them. If you're interested in getting started, please contact Jacqueline or me. We're easy to find on our website or on our socials. Thank you all so much, and I'm looking forward to questions.
Welcome to Rupa Health, the best place to order, manage, and track results from over 30 different lab companies in one single place for free. It's going to take you under 2 minutes to sign up, and you can order any functional medicine lab for your client in under 30 seconds. Let me show you how it's done. So here's our beautiful interface. I'm typing in the name of my client, selecting the lab that I want to order for them, and hitting send. From there, Rupa and their amazing team handle the rest. They email the client, collect payment, and even offer an interest-free 3-month payment plan. We've also built the world's largest library of information about chronic health conditions, the lab tests that can help you find the root cause, and the evidence-based interventions that you can use to help people heal from them. It's called the Rupa Health Magazine. There, we have in-depth articles about almost any health condition you can imagine. And we give you step-by-step protocols that other clinicians have used to help their clients heal and that are verified by evidence-based sources. You should totally check it out, and it'll transform your practice. And we can't wait to see you. So make sure you sign up today at rupahealth.com.